In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to build the best $1,300 gaming PC that you can assemble right now, with prices on RAM and memory super crazy at the moment, and good deals to be had on lots of other components. It's an interesting time to build a gaming PC. This system is going to be dominant at 1080p, provide awesome 1440p gaming performance, and do so at a price that won't break the bank. It's also a system that's got one eye on keeping those upgrade paths open for a bit of future proofing, and should be pretty easy to put together. As always, I'm going to walk you guys through how to assemble this system, the parts I've chosen and why, and we'll be looking in detail at performance later, so you can see the exact frame rates this build delivers in a wide range of the most popular and latest AAA titles. Let's do this. Corsair Custom Labs is here and supports a wide range of products and components, now including PC memory. Simply choose your desired Vengeance RGB configuration of speed and capacity and pick from one of the amazing custom designs. Whether you're into sci-fi or this amazing variation of Cherry Blossom, there's a myriad of options to pick from. You can match your peripherals with the same Custom Labs design too for a fully unified gaming setup, and even configure multiple product designs at once with live renders. Learn more about Corsair Custom Labs and check it out for yourself at the first link in the description below. Now let's start the build today with a bit of an update on pricing and where we're at, because things have changed quite a lot in the last few weeks. The first thing that's changed is memory. A 32GB kit of RAM is now going to cost you around £180 or dollars, which is frankly insane. Now lots of this is down to the big AI boom and OpenAI basically buying all of the world's DDR5 memory modules, but the good news is we can make up some of the budget elsewhere in the build, and we're hoping that the price is going to drop a little bit in the next few weeks and hopefully level out at a more reasonable figure. In terms of where we've seen price drops, you're currently seeing big savings on the CPU in this build, AMD's Ryzen 5 9600X, and even Nvidia's RTX 5070 has come down to a price that I think makes it a better value option than AMD's 9070. It really is interesting times. Now let's start off with the graphics card, because it's always such a subjective choice. I know that over the last few months, AMD have typically been better value. Cards like their 9070 XT are dominant. But right now, the 5070 is, I think, the best value GPU on the market. In the US, I've seen prices drop below $500 on a number of different models. And here in the UK, I've seen prices drop to as low as £469. This represents a saving of around $50 or $60 in the States compared to the RX 9070, and for that the 5070 gives you very similar performance. Unfortunately for AMD, they just don't seem to quite have the supply to see prices drop below MSRP and compete with Nvidia, and the 5070 is a great bet. It's got 12GB of video memory, which is perfect for 1080 and especially 1440p gaming. It's got good rasterization performance, and of course you get all of Nvidia's DLSS, ray tracing and frame generation technologies should you so want them. And I'll be testing both rasterization and all of those RT-led features a bit later on. Now this model right here is the MSI Gaming Trio. Depending on where you are regionally, some models are going to be cheaper and more expensive than others. This design is really nice with 3 fans, a large backplate at the rear, and this nice metallic dragon, which I think looks pretty awesome. In terms of the CPU I'll be pairing up with the RTX 5070, I wanted to keep the door open for both good 1440p and good 1080p gaming performance. For that reason, I've gone for the Ryzen 5 9600X. To be honest, at 1440p, where the CPU's less of a bottleneck, this is probably a little faster than what we really need, but at 1080p, it's going to really come into its own. In terms of your alternative options, you could pick up a last-gen Ryzen 7600, but I've actually seen the 9600X come within about £20 or dollars of the 7600, and for that extra price, I think the extra performance is definitely worth it. As for Intel, unfortunately, their Core Ultra just doesn't make sense at this price point. There are some Core Ultra CPUs that can work in terms of value. The Core Ultra 7, for example, gives you loads of cores at quite a low price, comparatively speaking. But for gaming, it's AMD all the way at the moment, and that's just the way it is. In terms of cooling, the 9600X doesn't come with a stock cooler, and the way you can tell is the thickness of the box. There ain't no cooler fitting in there. That means I've got to go out and buy one. So I've gone for this, the Valkyrie Surge SR SR125. Budget air coolers, it feels like the best option is changing all the time. And having reviewed the Surge SR125, which currently comes in around 25 USD and 25 pounds, we've seen it come within touching distance of the Vectra V5, John's Bose 120mm tower cooler, and even options from Thermalright. Now for that, you get a nice 120mm ARGB fan, and this fan is really good actually. It's a really high quality fan in terms of airflow and pressure, which is nice, and you get yourself a pretty standard simple tower air cooler. Now the heatsink is silver, which I don't love. However, the top of the cooler is black, so they've got that right. And once the fan's on, to be honest with you, I think color-wise, that looks pretty great. Other coolers in this price point also have a silver heatsink, to be fair, and I don't think spending loads of extra money for a black heatsink necessarily makes sense. Moving on to the motherboard next up, and I've picked up MSI's MAG B850 Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi. I wanted to go B850 in this build because AMD's higher-end chipset is just plainly overkill, and their lower-end B840 chipset is just not really caught on, to be honest with you. For as long as I can remember, MSI's Tomahawk range has represented some of the best value for money in motherboards, and this one is pretty stacked as far as features go. The IO's really strong too, with a 5GB Ethernet and Wi-Fi 7, something you won't find on cheaper boards, and the CPU power delivery here is a little better than on cheaper B850 options too. Crucially, this is one of the B850 boards that I would recommend you run a higher end CPU on, so again, if you want to upgrade in the future, you can do that. And because you can flash the BIOS with no CPU installed, when AMD released their next gen, I don't know, Ryzen 10,000 series, you'll be able to update the BIOS even without a CPU installed, leaving upgrade options open should you so wish to have them. You also get PCI Gen 5 support on the graphics card and for your NVMe SSD, and I really like MSI's toolless GPU release. The button with the lock and the unlock icon they have here is, I think, the best system out of Asus, MSI and GeekaWhat. It's just very easy to tell when the card's locked in and when it's not, which is the most important thing. Now, storage and RAM, this is where things at the moment get expensive, and that's kind of weird to say because it's felt like memory and SSD prices have only been falling and falling until like 2 weeks ago. Storage, I've gone for Crucial's P310, the 1TB drive, currently trending at around $94, $95, but not too bad. I'm going to recommend the 1TB for this build. If you want more storage, you can see here a 2TB option is available. It's a Gen 4 drive with really good speeds, up to 7GB on the read and write, which is frankly more than enough. In terms of the memory, I've gone Team Group's Delta DDR5, but I'm going to be honest with you, whatever 32GB, 6000 MHz kit you can buy or above, this is 64, is fine. Try and keep that latency as close to 30 as possible and as far away from 40 as you can, but honestly, good luck out there. Just buy whatever you can find that's got good reviews, good speeds and good latencies. Obviously make sure you've gone for two 16GB DIMMs, as that's what you're going to want for that dual channel performance, and 32GB of RAM really is required given current games and game sizes and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to come back to the case and the power supply later, so I'm going to start getting this thing built and begin as usual with the CPU. I know that you guys have installed CPUs before. Lift up the arm, lift up the socket, drop the chip into place with the little triangle up here in the top left hand corner, and then return the arm back down. Once I've done the CPU, I'm next going to move on to the RAM or the memory. I'll be using today the 2nd and 4th RAM DIMM slots, so I'm just going to pull the clips back at the top and then pull the same matching clips down at the bottom before sliding the T-Force memory in. Your T-Force logo is going to face outwards, the label is going to face towards the CPU. That's pretty much the same rule on all memory. Any label you've got is going to face backwards. Bit of pressure on both sides, you should get a nice satisfying click. Both of the clips will return to place of their own accord. You shouldn't be doing it manually. Next up is the M.2 SSD, so that's just going to go under here. Crucial's P310, not a particularly hot running drive, but certainly if you've got some cooling on your motherboard, that is going to be useful. I'm just going to lift up the M.2 heatsink with the little toolless latch. Really nice design actually, that is from MSI. Slide the SSD in, push it down, and you can see again there's a little toolless thing here. This is one of their, I think they call it easy DIY features. Makes things really simple. And yeah, your RAM, SSD and the CPU is all installed. Next thing is the cooler. Now, as I say, we have tested the cooler, we benchmarked it, but I'm going to admit I wasn't the one who installed it. So this is new for me. Quite a nice box and quite nice packaging though, and everything I need should be in this accessory box right here. So first things first, we've got this cable. Now this is a fairly standard RGB interface that I've seen other coolers use before, so that's going to go onto the fan and give us the fan header, which is this one, and then an RGB header slider for the motherboard, but also a pass-through, so that's nice to see. So you can connect multiple RGB fans up to this if you wanted to. And then we have two rather nicely labelled bags. One for, as you can see here, Intel brackets, and one for AMD. We're going to be needing the AMD ones. And then we're going to need this hardware here. So we've got some black double-ended male-to-male posts, and then we've got some silver thumb screws to secure down as well. Black posts are going to go in first on each corner around the processor, and then the silver brackets are going to sit on top, a little something like so. So you can see we've actually got the then male posts that come off of these on the outside of the processor. So you want to mount them such that they actually get wider around the CPU. The thumb screws are then going to go on. You can tighten these up with your thumbs, but I'd always finish them off with a screwdriver just to be safe. And you'll then be able to see how the cooler is actually going to install. So it just slots on top, and then these two screw threads are going to be tightened down. Now it does come if you have it brand new with pre-applied thermal paste, but as mentioned before, we try to test everything that I use in these builds before the builds are actually put together. So whatever stock thermal paste is now gone. In terms of how much thermal paste you need, not too much. A large grain of rice, about that is good. And then just put the lid back on and save any extra in case you, I don't know, mess the CPU cooler installation up or something along those lines. Hang on a second. I do have one correction to make earlier. I said earlier it came with an extra RGB pass-through cable. It doesn't. It actually has lighting at the top. The Valkyrie logo lights up, and that's what the extra RGB cable's for. Well, that's very clever. I like that. Now then, the CPU cooler is installed and we are making good progress, and it feels like an appropriate time to start talking about the case that I've selected for today's build. And this right here is the Montech XR. Now, I've built in the XR wood before, I've built in this view case a few times, and there's a couple of really big reasons that I like it just so much. Now, inside the case is fairly spacious. You've got room for standard ATX motherboards, good cable management grommets, you get two reverse blade intake fans and a standard normal blade exhaust. You get this nice mesh at the bottom for the power supply, and it's very, very affordable. One of the most affordable cases that you're going to find, especially with those three fans included and the kind of build quality that you get. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this case for super high-end builds where you're going to need loads and loads of airflow, as obviously you've got a lot of glass at the front. However, for a system like this where we've only got a 65-watt CPU, we've got a pretty power-efficient graphics card as well, it's going to be perfect. Now, because this case is ATX, everything's in the right place, all the standoffs and stuff are all good. The best thing to check with an ATX board is you've got 3 at the top, 3 along the middle, and 3 down the bottom. If you do, they're going to match up with your motherboard and you haven't got to worry too much. Now, what I'm going to do is just run this cable for the CPU cooler through one of the holes at the top of the case now before the motherboard goes in. That'll stop it from getting too trapped. And then I'm just going to line the motherboard itself up with all of those standoffs. So you can see it can be a bit of a process, but we're there. Once you've done that, it's then 9 screws. You get a little bag included with the case, 3 along the top, 3 along the middle, and 3 down the bottom. Please don't miss any out. Just do them all for my sanity and peace of mind, okay? And get that motherboard tight and make sure it's not going anywhere anytime soon. With the motherboard in, the next step is to take a look at the fan. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to look at where the cable is. The cable's down here at the bottom, and we want our cable to feed out at the back. I'm then going to use the silver brackets that come included and just clip them over at the very front of the fan, a little something like so. That's nice and easy, and just repeat that for the bottom of the fan as well. And then once that's all done, I'm actually going to connect that RGB harness from earlier, which have I managed to lose it already? Oh no, panic over, I found it. And I'm going to connect this up first, as I fear that if I don't, that's going to cause all sorts of problems. I'm then going to thread that fan cable through the grommet at the top above the CPU cooler, a little something like that. Lovely stuff. And then clip the fan on. So the silver clips here, just going to go onto the top and to the bottom of the cooler, little something like so. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to deal with the wiring and all that kind of stuff for the fan in a moment's time. First, the power supply. Now, for the PSU in today's build, which I appreciate I haven't yet spoken about, I've gone for this, the MSI MAG A750 GLS. Now, in lots of my price-conscious builds, I tend to gravitate towards MSI power supplies. And the reason being is they tend to offer great value for money and good features. And that really is all there is to it. Great value for money and good features. Now, on the back of the power supply, you can see we've got that native 12-volt 2x6 connector, which we really want for graphics cards. This MSI 5070 has got that connector as well. But even if you were going for a 9070 that didn't, you still want it on the power supply. It's really, really important in my opinion. And it just doesn't make sense to pay all that money for a PSU and then ruin all your upgrade options later on. In terms of the cables that come included, this makes me happy straight away. It's a trend I'm seeing more and more. Just look how nice those cables look. Now, they're not individually braided necessarily, but they are nylon sleeved on a cable by cable basis, which I think looks great. You get two in total. You get one that takes your standard 12 volt 2x6 into two 6+2 pins, and then you get an additional one which just basically runs into that PCI Gen 5 power connector. In terms of the other cables I'm going to plug in, I'm going to need at least one for the CPU, but probably two, yes. So CPU one, and there should be a second one. PCI, no. I was looking for the second CPU. I'm being really stupid. There's two on one cable, which is unusual, but I guess makes sense. I'm also going to pop in a motherboard power cable, so that's the biggest and the largest of the bunch. And then I don't know if I need a SATA power cable. I don't think I do for this build. We've got no RGB hubs. I think the case RGB goes straight into the motherboard, but I'm going to put one in anyway, just because having one in there might be helpful. And the old cables, don't chuck these away, don't throw them away. Keep hold of them for now, as you might want them in future. And we can also apply these little cable combs to the cables later, if we so wish, to tidy things up a bit. I'm then going to slide the PSU into the rear of the case. The fan is facing down, so it's going to pull in air from underneath, but you could do fan up in this case if you were putting this system on like thick carpet. And then I'm going to screw the power supply in, so you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 holes in total. I'm then going to go ahead and plug in the HD audio cable to the bottom left, the JFP1 cable to the bottom right hand side, our USB Type A, which goes down to the bottom right, Type C, which goes a little bit further up, and also add a fan and RGB header. These are both going to go at the bottom onto the motherboard too. These cables are actually daisy chainable, so you can daisy chain and link together any other fans and RGB elements in this build to get everything wired up nicely. And once that's complete, there is one component left, and that particular component is our GPU. Now, I have used this case before, which means a couple of the PCI lanes at the rear have already been removed, which are the second and third. Now let's hover the GPU in and see if they're the right ones. Yes, they are. So that's good news. I'm then going to use the lock and unlock button to unlock the PCI latch on the motherboard before sliding the card into place. It really is that easy. Bit of pressure. Beautiful. I'm then going to return the lock button down. That should stop our card from coming out. And then use 2 screws, tighten and fasten it into place. Don't forget to then run the GPU power cable, which actually handily has its own little grommet, to the graphics card, like so. Pull any of the slack back through, and we should have ourselves a completed gaming PC build. We're going to go ahead and get the system cable managed a little bit more nicely, and then this thing is good to go. Looking really good, and I've got to say I'm so happy with how this build turned out. The Montech XR is such a lovely looking case with these 2 glass panels. The little RGB on the end of the GPU looks fantastic. Even the air cooler with a subtle RGB on the Valkyrie logo and a really nice looking 120mm fan with great RGB diffusion just make the whole thing look quite complete. In order to test today's gaming PC build, I've picked up MSI's MAG271QPX. Now this is a QD OLED monitor, so it's quantum dot and OLED. It's a bit overkill for the build today, but it's 240Hz and it's 1440p, which is perfect, as this build for me is either a high frame rate 1080p system or a great 1440p gaming PC build. But how does it actually perform? Well, in order to find out, I've tested this in a wide variety of titles, and a summary of what these results look like is on your screen now. We'll be taking a closer look at some of these games, and why not start from highest to lowest on the frame rate front. First up is F1 2025, tested using the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode at the 1440p ultra high preset. Here the system pulls in an impressive 168 frames per second on average, not bad. And while it is in the benchmark mode, which is a bit more boring to look at, it does give us a great idea of what the visuals stack up to, and to me, they're pretty good. Moving through to Call of Duty's Black Ops 6, and we tested here once again at 1440p high rasterization. Here the build achieved again a really solid 165 frames per second on average, and there's a really nice visual experience. To me, this frame rate is just high enough for like the zombies and the online modes where you can be competitive, but obviously if you want to go a step further, take advantage of higher refresh rates like you'll find on a monitor like this, you could of course drop down to 1080p. Moving through into Cyberpunk 2077, and again it is a case of the in-game benchmark. So visually, it's not quite as interesting as the game can be, but again, it lets you compare this system against lots of my other builds on the channel. Here at that 1440p high preset, the build pulled in 126 frames per second, which is not too bad. Moving on to Battlefield 6 next up, and again, testing here was done at 1440p on the high settings preset. Frame rate here was really strong, 122 frames per second at that 1440p high, and the final game of those we tested today to sit above that 100 FPS triple digit marker. The final two games I benchmarked, and the only two today to not surpass 100 FPS, were Marvel's Rivals, first of all. Here at 1440p on the high settings preset, Marvel's Rivals achieved less than 100, but only just with 97.6 FPS, while Doom the Dark Ages, which was also tested at 1440p high, sat at just 74. These last two games are the only two really where 1080p might be more the flavour of this build, or you can stick at that higher res but turn the visual fidelity settings down. If you want to check out all the parts of today's build, I'll link latest pricing and availability at the links in the description below for different regions and retailers. Get subscribed to see more from me. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.